It's a new day, the story of legacy. 2008 was sort of a transitional period for WWE as they had just gone PG, and they were looking to build up some superstars. Superstars such as CM Punk and Jeff Hardy became world champions during that year, while stars like MVP, Mr. Kennedy, and Carlito weren't pushed to the next level. The WWE pushed a few new stars in 2008 such as Kofi Kingston, Dolph Ziggler, and Jack Swagger, but the two with the most potential at the time were two second-generation superstars, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr. In this video, I will talk about Priceless, Legacy, all that stuff. Cody Rhodes debuted on the July 2nd, 2007 episode of Raw. Rhodes was involved in the feud between his father Dusty and Randy Orton. Cody would eventually start a feud with Hardcore Holly, and after a few matches with one another, the two then formed mutual respect and formed a tag team. They eventually won the World Tag Team Championships from Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch on the special 15th anniversary episode of Raw. The two would hold the titles for a long time. After a successful title defense by Rhodes and Holly, Ted DiBiase Sr. came out and said that their days of being tag champions were numbered, and then he introduced his son Ted DiBiase Jr. DiBiase then cut a promo saying that he wanted to be a tag champ like his father, and then said that he is priceless. The next few weeks, Ted began saying that his tag team partner will come to Night of Champions. At Night of Champions, Ted DiBiase came out and then he said that his tag partner is coming and that he will be here in a few minutes. The referee said that the match will start regardless and that if he didn't want to start, then it's a forfeit. Rhodes started first, but then DiBiase demanded Holly instead of Rhodes. As Holly entered the ring, Cody Rhodes hit a DDT on him. Ted DiBiase then announced that his tag team partner is Cody Rhodes. DiBiase then used the $1 Million Dream and hit a variation of a Russian leg sweep to win the match. So Cody Rhodes lost the title and won a title at the same time. I don't remember anyone doing that. And Ted is probably the second superstar other than Santino Marella to win a championship in his WWE debut. The two held the championships until the August 4th episode of Raw where they lost it to the team of John Cena and Batista, who did nothing with the titles but pose off with them at the end of the episode. DiBiase and Rhodes, however, won the tag titles the next week on Raw. On the September 1st episode of Raw, Randy Orton returned after being 3 months out. Orton bashed all of Raw's champions, calling Beth Phoenix a lovesick teenager. Orton then called the World Tag Team Champions who got their titles stolen by Crime Time. Orton called Priceless worthless. He trashed them. Then Randy Orton insulted CM Punk, calling him a nobody. CM Punk did come out and call Orton an afterthought though. Later in the night, Priceless confronted Orton and were questioning the fact that he called them worthless. Orton then proceeded to slap Cody Rhodes after talking about his father. Orton then said that until Priceless changed, then he meant every single word he said. Later that night, Crime Time were attacked before their match started by Priceless, who then took back their titles. After the commercial break, Priceless confronted Orton, showing that they brought back their tag team championships as Orton looked on. At Unforgiven, Rhodes and DiBiase retained their tag team championships, and after the match, Manu debuted by attacking Crime Time. Later in the night, Orton told Priceless that nothing was impressive in that matchup. Later on, Orton insulted CM Punk during his interview with Eve Torres, and all of a sudden Rhodes, DiBiase, and Manu ganged up on Punk. Kofi Kingston tried to help, but he was overpowered. Orton then punted Punk in the skull. Orton, with a callback to Rhodes' statement earlier, called that impressive. On the 800th episode of Raw, Randy Orton returned to in-ring competition with his first opponent being CM Punk. During the match, Orton was looking to hit the RKO on Punk when Ted DiBiase interfered and got revenge on CM Punk by attacking him. Orton then proceeded to punt DiBiase. I mean, the young guys just wanted to help him, that's all. This was a way of writing off Ted DiBiase, who was set to star in the second Marine movie. The next week, Cody Rhodes slapped Randy Orton and took his place in a match against Batista. Obviously, Cody got his ass kicked and Manu got speared after the match. The next few weeks, Rhodes and Orton would not be on the same page. On the December 1st episode of Raw, Orton told Manu and Rhodes that if they want to reach their potential, then they should meet him in his locker room. After John Cena's matchup with Kane, Rhodes and Manu attacked him, which led to Jericho and Orton coming out. The next week, Orton challenged Batista, who was feuding with Orton at the time, to a 3-on-2 handicap match with Manu and Rhodes teaming up against Batista and Triple H, who we'll obviously get to in a minute. Orton won the match by hitting the RKO on Batista. At Armageddon, Batista defeated Randy Orton by hitting the Batista bomb for the win. The next night on Raw, Orton teamed up with Manu and Rhodes to face John Cena and Batista in a handicap match. Later in the match, Orton shoved the referee, which led to Orton getting disqualified. Orton then punted Batista. Batista was taken out due to the pump. He was out. In reality, Batista had a torn hamstring stemming from the match with John Cena at SummerSlam. So Batista underwent surgery and was out for about 4 months. The next week, Snuka, the guy who was in Deuce and Domino, told Orton that he wants to be a part of this group. Orton told him that he might add another member to the legacy. The next week, Orton said that he will not accept losers and that if any one of the proteges lost, then they would be out of the group. Rose defeated CM Punk after William Regal interfered and distracted Punk. Snuka defeated Charlie Haas, who at the time had a gimmick of impersonating superstars, to clinch a spot in Randy Orton's legacy. Manu faced ECW champion Matt Hardy in a losing effort, which meant that he was kicked out of legacy. A little side note for a second. During this episode, Kelly was talking to someone about them not returning her calls. She thought that they had something special, and then all of a sudden we see Randy Orton. Orton says that it was only one night and that it wasn't memorable. Orton then said if he was a world champion, then the last thing he needs is a distraction like Kelly. It was so random. The next week, Orton told Sim and Cody that they would have to win again later that night. Then Manu showed up and asked Orton for a second chance. Orton proceeded to tear apart Manu and insulted his father Alpha. Later that night, Rhodes and Snuka defeated Crime Time. Backstage after the match, Orton told Rhodes he's in and that Snuka is out. Snuka tried to question it, but Orton didn't want to hear it. Orton said that since Rhodes got the pinfall, then he's in. The next week, Snuka and Manu confronted Rhodes. They berated Rhodes for joining Orton. Rhodes stated that they would have done the exact same thing. The two then told Rhodes that he had a choice of being with them or against them, and then added that they're bringing along with them another second generation superstar. Now, obviously, you know who they're talking about. I mean, it's obviously who you think it is. After Orton wrongfully won his match against Kane, Snuka and Manu came out and wanted to know Cody's answer. Then Ted DiBiase returned after 2 months out due to the pump by Randy Orton and because of the Marine 2 thing. The four then surrounded Orton around the ring. Orton then went after Snuka, which led to DiBiase and Rhodes ganging up on Snuka, and then they ganged up on Manu. Then Orton smiled at DiBiase and Rhodes, signaling the formation of a new group called Legacy. Orton later on told DiBiase that he was only trying to knock some sense into him with that punt. The next week on Raw, there was a rumor that Manu and Snuka were in Stephanie's office and that Stephanie was gonna fire him. Orton went into Stephanie's office and started to suck up to Stephanie, which led to Stephanie ordering Orton to get out of her office. Orton then insulted Stephanie by saying that the only reason she has this job is because her father was Mr. McMahon, which led to Stephanie slapping Orton. Later that night, Chris Jericho was begging for his job back to Stephanie, which he did get back after he apologized on his knees. Mr. McMahon returned after 7 months out from that set accident, and the first person he met was obviously Chris Jericho, and then Randy Orton, who came out and said that Stephanie should apologize to him because he's going to win the Royal Rumble and make millions of dollars for the company doing so. Mr. McMahon told Stephanie to go to the back after he insulted her heavily. Then McMahon started talking about Orton's father and how he made him a star. McMahon then ordered Orton to apologize to him. Orton told him that he does not want him to do that and then added "sir." Like, you don't want me to do that, sir. As McMahon was about to fire Orton, Orton slapped McMahon and kicked him in the face. Then Orton proceeded to punt McMahon. Orton looked remorseful. It was crazy stuff. 1 minute, Orton had issues with Snuka and Manu, and all of a sudden, Orton had a problem with the entire WWE. The punk gave Mr. McMahon a concussion in real life, with McMahon wanting Orton to punt him as real as possible. McMahon sometimes is pretty insane though. Manu would not be seen again and would be released on February 23rd of that year. Randy Orton in a May 2009 interview stated that the reason Manu was released was due to the fact that Manu had a bad attitude backstage and that he didn't feel like paying his dues. At the Royal Rumble, Legacy were the final four along with Triple H. Triple H eliminated Rhodes and DiBiase back to back, but Orton came from behind to eliminate the game and win the Royal Rumble for the first time in his career. One thing I liked about this match was the fact that Legacy weren't turning on each other and they had one goal in mind: to help Randy Orton win the Royal Rumble. That's all. They didn't think about eliminating themselves. They didn't think about anything. They knew that once they were in the end of the match, they would eliminate themselves and Orton would win. Also, another small fact: Randy Orton was the first heel to win the Royal Rumble in 10 years. The next night on Raw, Orton came out with his attorneys and a therapist. Orton stated that he suffered from IED, which is the reason why he sometimes goes insane, just like the week before, where he punted Mr. McMahon. Orton claimed WWE knew of the condition but didn't care. Orton then threatened to sue the WWE and would also sue them for breach of contract if he were fired due to the fact that he was legally entitled to a match at WrestleMania due to winning the Royal Rumble. He'll put everyone out of a job job if he was fired. That's what he said. Then it turned into a face-off between the two, Stephanie and Randy Orton. Stephanie said that instead of firing Orton, she planned something bigger. Shane McMahon then came out and brawled with Legacy and hit some of the worst worked punches as the Raw locker room looked on. The next week, Raw was in St. Louis, which was Randy Orton's hometown, and he was booed in his own hometown. Later in the night, Legacy ambushed Stephanie and Shane when Orton was contemplating whether or not to punk Shane. He went for Stephanie instead and almost got her, but Shane jumped in the way and got kicked in the ribs. Orton looked remorseful after the segment. At No Way Out, Randy Orton defeated Shane McMahon in a no-holds-barred match. The next night, Shane challenged Randy to an unsanctioned match. As Shane McMahon was about to go for a coast-to-coast, Legacy attacked Shane, which led to Orton punting Shane, which led to Stephanie coming out, which led to Randy hitting the RKO on her. Orton once again looked remorseful. An angry Triple H came out to check on Stephanie, restarting the rivalry between the two, but this time Triple H was the face and Orton was the heel. On that week's SmackDown, Triple H finally confirmed he was with Stephanie for the first time on WWE TV. The next week, Triple H chased Legacy with a damn sledgehammer through the entire locker room. On the March 2nd episode of Raw, Orton with a bunch of security guards decided he was going to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania. Triple H came out and tried to convince Orton to face him for the WWE Championship. After talking about evolution in Orton's past, Orton agreed to challenge Triple H at WrestleMania. On the March 6th episode of SmackDown, Triple H faced Umaga in a singles matchup. Legacy interfered and destroyed Triple H. Now is the most memorable part of Orton's feud with Triple H. On the March 9th episode of Raw, Triple H was scheduled to face Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase in a handicap match, with Randy Orton away in St. Louis, Missouri. The game's entrance played and Lillian Garcia announced Triple H twice, which led to DiBiase and Rhodes giving the victory due to the game forfeiting. Randy appeared on the screen and started to ramble on about Triple H not showing up, and that wasn't really a victory to Legacy. Orton then told his wife to get the door and then quickly realized that it was the game. It was the game alright. He broke the door with a sledgehammer. Orton then disappeared while Triple H started to search for him. With the game kicking doors and finding Orton's family members, the Viper was nowhere to be found until Orton appeared from behind a curtain and tried to defend his house. The two then brawled with Triple H gaining the upper hand and then throwing Randy Orton through a window, which led to the police arriving and arresting Triple H. Orton the next week would say he didn't press charges due to the fact that Triple H will pay his debt at WrestleMania. Triple H faced DiBiase and Orton in a handicap match. Rhodes also came out and the three jumped Triple H, which led to Rhodes handcuffing Triple H and Orton grabbing a sledgehammer, threatening to bash his brains in. Orton then grabbed the microphone and said that only one person could save Triple H. He was implying Stephanie did come out, but Orton hit the second rope DDT on Stephanie. It was crazy. Orton then kissed an unconscious Stephanie McMahon in front of a handcuffed Triple H. This feud was something else. It was crazy. It was insane. It was amazing. Triple H stood up and was met with a sledgehammer by Orton. On the Go Home Raw episode, Orton was cutting a promo when all of a sudden a limousine was shown on the Titantron. And Mr. McMahon returned after 2 months out from the punt. Shane O'Mac returned too, and then Triple H came out. They were looking for a fight. The three then went through the security guards and went straight to Legacy. They should seriously hire better security for these things. Like, come on. They just went through them like, boom, that's all. The six of them brawled to end the Raw before WrestleMania on a high note. Sometime before WrestleMania, Vicky Guerrero announced a stipulation that if Triple H was disqualified or counted out, then he would forfeit the championship. This would bite the match in the ass as it would set the mood for the match. The match at WrestleMania was extremely underwhelming. The fact that it was a blood feud and the payoff was a normal match was ridiculous. Triple H retained the title by punting Orton and using the sledgehammer with the referee knocked down, and then he hit the pedigree for the victory. Randy Orton in a May 2009 interview stated, "We weren't able to go to the extreme. If anything hurt us, it was that." Orton was alluding to the fact that Triple H wanted retribution for everything Orton did to him, and the fact that it wasn't a no DQ match. In my opinion, the thing that really hurt the match the most was the fact that Undertaker and HBK were on earlier. That is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, and it hurt the world title match and the main event. It affected them. Alright, I'm gonna come back with a part 2 of Legacy to talk about the next topics, like how they ended the feud with Triple H, how they started the feud with Cena, how they ended, how the Kofi Kingston feud started, and the downfall of Legacy, all of that. Peace, I'm out.